Joining me this morning, Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo. So good to see you.
Likewise.
Tell me, was I right about that? Were you really, it looked like you had a glow about yourself when you were greeting those folks.
I really did. I really enjoyed that day, and I was remembering the equivalent day last year, election day, when I was on the ballot. And, you know, I know we left everything out on the field. We did our best. I was proud of our team. But I was feeling low inside, even though I was smiling. And so it was really nice to have that contrast. It was really special.
Well, you talked about this a lot. You've been very open to talk about the challenging time you had. You went in inpatient care for depression. You came back. And now, how are you feeling now? And how has the challenge been to seek treatment without worrying about what kind of political consequences there may be?
Well, I feel really great. I feel really great. I feel calmer. I feel happier, and I feel that I'm able to do this job or be in politics for the long haul in a sustainable way. And I feel really lucky and blessed that I was able to take the time. I know that for a lot of people, there's that stigma just to admit that you have a mental illness, or even to take time off, whether you have a mental illness or a physical illness. So I feel that I got lucky. The stars sort of aligned for me to be able to do it. And if I hadn't, I really am afraid I would have ended up killing myself.
Can you describe the kinds of feelings that you were having, and who or what helped you realize that you needed to go get help?
So in retrospect, turns out I've always had anxiety. Like, I don't remember when it ever began. So, you know, always just very, very anxious about wanting to do everything perfectly, or for everything to turn out perfectly, even things you can't control. But the real problematic piece was the depression. And so now I know that since I was maybe 24, 25, I began having depression and just feeling like I was trapped, feeling really low, and no matter that I had a good job that I enjoyed, you know, didn't matter that I have great friends and a great partner and a great family, and I exercise and I sleep well and have a therapist, I still just feel so low all the time. And so at one point, it became so frustrating, that feeling of being trapped, that I felt, you know, the only way out of this is to jump off the balcony, because I can't live like this. And what was even more difficult for me is that I had a therapist at that point for probably like 5 years. And I had a psychiatrist for about a year when things got really, really, really bad. But, you know, I'd been suicidal various times over the past, 8 years.
Something that you obviously didn't share with a lot of people for obvious reasons. What were the barriers that you experienced trying to find the care that you ultimately got?
So, Kimbrel, that is what is, I so appreciate you asked that question, is I actually did share with a lot of the people around me that I was feeling suicidal. I mean, obviously I didn't stand up and say it at a press conference, but my friends knew, my family knew, even some of my staff knew. But they also knew that I had a therapist and that I had a psychiatrist. And so, you know, now and I've heard from a lot of them say, you know, I'm so sorry that I didn't do more. But they didn't know any better. None of us know any better, because we're not educated in mental illness. And so what was happening is that therapist and that psychiatrist were not the right fit. They misdiagnosed me. They just, you know, I don't know what was going through their head, but obviously they were not treating me properly. And for my part, I didn't have the same self-awareness that one does when it goes for a physical ailment. You know, if I go to my primary care physician and I tell him, hey, my finger hurts, and you know, it's debilitating, my hand hurts, and he says, no, it doesn't, you're fine, I'm gonna go to a different doctor. You know, in this case, I said, hey, to my doctor, I think I'm depressed. He said, no, you're not depressed. I was like, okay, you know, because I didn't know that I needed to listen to myself when it came to mental illness also.
So when you found that right fit, that was really an eye-opening kind of thing. And talk about the kind of feeling that came over you as you realized you were starting to get the kind of help and support you needed.
I remember crying when I was at the Lindner Center for Hope. I went to this inpatient place in Ohio that my other psychiatrist recommended, I really credit him and my PCP with saving my life, is I just by chance ended up at my primary care physician's office. I'd gotten dehydrated riding my bike, and I said to him, hey, I think I'm depressed, this is what's happening, just break down crying. He says, something's wrong. You got to talk to the psychiatrist. He sends me over to Ohio. So anyway, they do like 10 days of diagnostic work, every test under the sun. And they finally, you go to a meeting where you sit there with the psychiatrist, the psychologist, the social worker, a neuroscience expert who's done all the testing. And I had my boyfriend there, my friend. And I just remember looking at them and crying tears of joy and saying, I cannot believe that all of you guys are here working to help me feel better. And at the time, I still felt awful, but I just felt so lucky. And then when they said, you have clinical depression, you're severely depressed, but you can fix this. I didn't really believe them. I was like, I just feel so low. But at that point, I was protected. I was in a place where I know they're not gonna let me jump off a balcony. There isn't one. They're watching me, they're helping me, and they say I can get through this. And it was incredible.
Well, one of the good things about all of this is that you're back, and you say you feel better than ever. And now you have an opportunity to represent what can happen for people who may be on the dark side, that there is a light side. Do you embrace that role to be able to do that for people who may need help and don't know how to get it?
100%, and especially because I feel somebody did that for me. So Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania had sought treatment for depression in February, March of this year. And when I read that, I was like, that's interesting. Of course, I was feeling depressed, so I didn't make that connection. Well, come June, July, when I was, the lowest I've ever been, there was another article that came out about his experience, and it said that, his wife, his doctor, and his staff got together and figured out we need to send him to inpatient mental health treatment. And so that was what emboldened me to go to my therapist and say, hey, can you work with my boyfriend, and can you all find me someplace to go? He said, well, you're not John Fetterman. So, that was awful, and I don't know how I made it home that day, but even after that, I knew to ask the question, and I said to my boyfriend, there's got to be something we can do, and then everything kind of aligned with my PCP. So I want to do that for people. I want to help folks understand, number one, what's mental illness, and my main message is if you feel something is wrong and you really feel like, you've tried to make yourself feel better, it's not on you, it's an illness, it's a disease. Mm-hmm. And then what treatment exists out there. And part of that, of course, we need more resources, of course, but it's gonna be really hard to get more resources if we don't talk about this. Right.
Well, that's what we're doing now. We're gonna continue to do that. But before I take a break, though, I do wanna ask you about the news this week, about an investigation that continues in the case involving 3 of your now former indicted staffers regarding the Elevate Strategies contract. Texas Rangers search warrants released this week allege that many documents offered by a grand jury subpoena were in fact concealed, not turned over by your audience. What response do you have to those latest allegations? This has been going on for quite some time.
It has. It's been going on for quite some time. It started when I was up for re-election last year, and every allegation that's been brought up that, sounds really scandalous, it turns out to be either just patently false or an egregious misrepresentation of the facts. And so this is a combination of those, or one or the other. Obviously, I have no reason to believe anyone would hold back documents. I mean, obviously that wouldn't have happened. But what I will say is, last year I was up for re-election. Now the DA is up for re-election, and she's got this fantastic opponent who is smart, who is experienced, who is honest and has a strong moral compass, and is outraising her, and just released a poll that he's ahead. So she's against the wall. And, it's interesting we're talking about mental health, because I learned, at some point you just don't have the right coping skills when you feel frustrated or scared or whatever it is. And what is very clear to me from her pattern of behavior, she comes after the sitting judge that was going to challenge her in her election. Of course, that never turned to anything, even though she had him investigated. Ultimately, poor guy's arrested. They dismiss everything, but now you've hurt his reputation. She's been coming after, whoever crosses her. This has been reported. And so now she is, again, using the power of her office to pursue that political vendetta. And I think that's just her MO, is when she feels against the wall, she's going to leverage her office, come after people. She's got an election coming up March 5th. She's freaked out, and so here we go again.
So, but the optics aren't good for you, though. I mean, the optics are that you had edited something, and that's not, and somehow that was not included in the subpoenaed article. So, is that, what do you do?
Well,
how do you get around the optics of that?
I mean, you don't, right? Like, that's what she wants. Is she wants to make it about me versus her, because she's got this opponent. She's got 80 precinct chairs on the Democratic side that are trying to get her admonished. She's polling lower. She's not raising the right amount of money. I won my re-election, but I know I didn't do anything. At some point, lawyers will respond with the point to point to point. We don't even have time for that right now. But as it's proven with every single political vendetta she's pursued against numerous people, whether it's Rodney Ellis, whether it's Daryl Jordan, whether it's Jim Bethke, whether it's me, whether it's the budget director, public health director, look, I'm at 6. It comes to nothing. All of the, tens of accusations she's made against me and my staff. The thing is, the judge hasn't heard it, hasn't ruled on it, so she hasn't had a chance to fall flat on her face, as she has elsewhere, but she will. And for now, on this side of the mental health treatment, I always kind of saw it as a challenge. Like, for me, it's like, if you push me, I'll push back, and I'll push back harder. So before I was like, come at me. But of course, I was getting anxious about it. Now I'm still like, okay, you want to go another round? Let's go another round. But I'm just excited to work against her re-election in March, and that's how you fight. In politics, is at the ballot box. You don't go and use your resources of your office to attack your political enemies. And it's unfortunate she does that, and I feel a bit sorry for her that that's the only sort of coping strategy she has, but
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to answer that question. I want to continue our conversation as well.